Hello, and welcome to Contemporary Perspectives on Black Homeschooling, a podcast brought to you by Black Family Homeschool Educators and Scholars, LLC. Black Family Homeschool Educators and Scholars' mission is to provide ongoing community engagement regarding Black homeschooling through the publication of scholarly and trade work on the topic and the production of community events targeting Black homeschool families and entrepreneurs engaged in the practice of Black homeschooling. We are the first US-based research and education group dedicated specifically to the topic of Black family homeschooling. Today, our guest is Matthew Rankin, a former teacher, a father, and a doctoral student at Emory University. He is the recent recipient of the 2021 Dolores Aldrich Graduate Award for his research on the gendered nature of Black homeschooling efforts. Welcome, Matthew.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
I'm so glad you're here. So I guess to give some context to who you are, my first question to you is a request for you to just give us a little backstory on what you're studying at Emory and why you decided to focus your dissertation research on Black homeschooling.
Okay, great. Thank you. And so at Emory, my concentrations are in the, if you want to say sectors or areas of social inequality and social psychology. But specifically for my dissertation, I am focusing on Black homeschooling efforts, as you noted earlier. But more specifically, I'm interested in the ways in which how does gender shape Black homeschooling efforts, right? Over the past, few decades, whether or not you hear it in popular media or in studies, the homeschooling population in the Black community is on the rise. And, you know, hearing that news the first time, I remember vividly just, hearing that on the radio and hearing about this movement. And I'm just like, okay, I sort of earmark it for a later point in time, but it just always stuck with me. And when it came time to piece together my dissertation proposal, I was combing through just different topics that I had culled together all throughout my tenure in grad school, and so okay, what can I really delve into deeply? What can I really sink my teeth into, and what's going to really sustain me throughout this process and really just keep my juices flowing, keep my energy really high? And that was one topic that I wanted to go back to. I tucked it away back in 2016, shortly before I enrolled. But when it came time to actually put the pedal to the metal, so to speak, I pulled out of my pocket and I said, hey, let's go for it. Let's really get into it. And I'm really interested in the way in which Black homeschooling efforts, what does it look like? Who are the key players? I'm sort of asking all these questions, right? How does it manifest? How do parents and children interact in their spaces? What do these spaces look like? So all of these questions really are essentially bouncing off of my head or inside of my inside of my skull. And so I want to figure out a way to put it on paper and really bring to light, just the inner intricacies of this movement and the people who are part of it.
Now, I know you were a stay-at-home dad, or I don't know if you still are, but I know that you were an educator and a stay-at-home dad. Have you and your family transitioned to your own homeschooling practice, or are you looking at this specifically through the eyes solely as a researcher?
Okay, thank you. So, yes, I was an at-home dad formerly from 2013 to 2016. That's when our first child was born, my son, who is now 7. But I was at home with him for the first 3 years of his life. Amazing times. Whenever I think about it, I just you can't help but just but beam, right? It's a very special experience. So currently, as a grad student, I guess you could say formally, I'm not homeschooling. We now have a daughter as well. She's on the scene, age 2.
Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, our son, he's lightning, and our daughter, she's the game changer. And so that's pretty much how I try to just think about them, how I think about them. But to answer your question, yes, as a family, we have definitely dipped our toes in, and we are wading in the waters of homeschooling as a family and as as a graduate student, right? And so that balance is not easy. It's not an easy balance, trying to homeschool and trying to get your own doctoral work done, also while balancing that with my better half. She has her career, right? And so it's like, how do we all, as a family unit and extended family unit, how do we all come together and keep this ship afloat. And it's no day is the same. I'll just say that.
Oh, you are speaking to the choir. I got my doctorate it was awarded last year, but with COVID, I just had my graduation this year because I actually defended my dissertation the week of closings, quarantining. So
Oh,
Friday the 13th in March last year. And
okay.
so I do not have babies like you do. Well, she will always be my baby, but my only child, I homeschooled her off and on for 13 years. So I was homeschooling while my doctoral studies. So I cannot actually imagine homeschooling two little people, little people, while in graduate school, because my daughter was homeschooled her through high school. So at this age, very self-directed. She was dual enrolled in community college at the time. So hats off to you and your wife, because I can only imagine all of the struggles, but I can also imagine and especially with your background in education, you wanting to apply many of the strategies and things that you found helpful as a teacher before you had your children, and definitely now as a scholar. So that leads me to my next question, because I did some digging I was very pleased to come across the news of your award. And I love just seeing Black researchers focusing on Black homeschooling, because as I'm sure you know now in the midst of your research, that there really is a dearth of, there's not much at all when compared to homeschooling that white families engage in. There's really not comparable research on the practice of Black families who homeschool. Definitely not a lot of things from the voices of the homeschoolers themselves, but definitely not a lot on the different practices that we engage in. And your dissertation topic on the gendered nature of homeschooling is fascinating to me. And so I came across a blog post that you wrote, and I think you were still in the midst of homeschooling your first baby when he was a toddler. I forget the name of the blog, but there was something, you wrote it in 2016. The blog post was titled Homeschooling as a Supplement Series, Educational Philosophies and Ideals. And you said your educational philosophy serves as the extension of your parenting philosophy. And I love that. And I would love for you to talk about or give a little bit more context as to what you mean with that. And did you find this in your research, or have you been finding it in your research? I don't know if you finished your research and you're in the writing phase, but did you find where this adage it really applied also to homeschooling?
Okay, thank you. Well, first I want to say congratulations to you for defending.
Oh,
You
thank
said
you.
on Friday the 13th, which is actually a lucky day for you. So kudos
Yes,
to you.
thank you.
But yeah, to that point, I definitely do see homeschooling as an extension of parenting. And to your earlier points, the idea that you know all of the things that I've learned as an educator myself, I had the privilege of working in public schools, private schools, lower school, middle school, not high school, not high school. High school kids kind of scare me a little bit, but no, I had the chance to work at different age brackets, different demographics, and essentially just different class backgrounds and schools with different resources and stuff. But that being said, all those experiences collectively to this day shape me. They influence me. And in many ways, I see education and parenting having this parallel in the sense that I take them very personally. Now, for some people, like I said, I'm not. This is no judgment against anyone, but for some people, possibly education or teaching is a job. Like I said, that's no knock against those who do, but for me, I never saw it as that. I feel like when you're in that space, when you're an educator, whether you're in a formal classroom or like me, you're at home,
Mhm.
there is this I don't know, there's this sort of intangible sort of air or quality about being in that role, and what that means is a big responsibility when you have several eyes on you, or when the idea that, but at the same time knowing that you can still be authentically human and be yourself, and
Mhm.
seeing the people in the classroom with you as I never. So basically, go back to the parenting philosophy. My wife and I, we definitely have old school upbringings, old school values, but for the most part, we definitely try to put our own spin on how we want to parent. We definitely try our best to, if you want to use the phrase progressive or new age parenting styles, but sort of a hybrid, right? We still try to sort of maintain the old school foundational values that definitely forms the crux of what we do, how we
What does
speak.
that mean? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but when you say old school, what do you mean? Because
Yeah,
you're
right.
such a young person.
Yeah. So, well, my parents, may they rest in peace. They, both of them grew up in very, very traditional households, right? They both come from very big families. My mom, she was one of 15. My dad's one of 11, right? And so
Oh,
both,
wow.
yeah, both born in the South. Both had very, very, if you want to say, just sort of traditional households with, mother and father there, and those, when I say old school values, I'm talking more so just the idea of respect, courtesy, integrity, being held accountable, the idea of you look out for one another, right? Look out for your family, look out for your friends, being truthful, being honest. So they may seem like very, very universal, values that people of all walks of life may espouse. But when I think old school, I think just more so the idea of towing that line right between, yes, we are younger parents, we are quote unquote progressive parents or new age parents, if you will, but at the same time we are still your parents. And so
Right.
just really, really towing that line and really, really finding that balance between, yes, we don't want you to fear us as authoritarians, but more so walk alongside us and allow us to guide you, and we're going to allow you to guide us along this journey as well, and we're here to support you as our children. And one day there will be a time when we're going to let go and let you
Right.
guys take the reins. And so that's what I say when I think old school, more so kind of the idea of just like that kind of a traditional, just the value set, so to speak.
Right. But it also sounds like you've done quite a lot of work in pulling the parts of parenting and being an educator from different generations that you find. I love that word cull, because it reminds me of curating. You've kind of found what works, what has worked. But what I'm hearing, what I is that you haven't stated forthrightly, but what I'm hearing is that what leads all of this is the respect of the humanity that you have for your children. So it's, when you said it's not authoritarian, is that there's good in what prior generations have done in establishing respect for each other, but it doesn't come at the cost of invoking fear or corporal behaviors and things like that. And I think that in itself is what makes it quite progressive, is that you found value in a lot of the older strategies. I think, especially when you think of the Black community, you think of the mother, the teachers that call the parents on the phone, how the
Yeah.
whole neighborhood knows your child and has the and
Yes.
has the authority to say something to them. But I hear and I appreciate that what you're saying is that it's all of that, but it also is and this emphasis on the humanity of the child as well. And
De-
so, yeah.
Definitely, yeah. And I guess, like you said, it's sort of like that idea of like definitely am a firm believer in the idea of the village mentality, right? That it takes a village to raise a child, and in many ways it could take a village to help just fortify, a family and a family's idea about who they are in the world and how they interact with other people and how they see other people, and
Mhm.
really, really developing an understanding of oneself and ourselves as social agents in this world, and just trying to find our way through it, navigating it together. And I think, like I said, going back to the idea of education, pulling together everything, whether it be from my own familial upbringing, my teaching stints at different schools, whether it be in affluent neighborhoods or
Mhm.
in schools that may have Black resources, but you could pull something from everything. You could pull
Right.
something from every location and every experience, every interaction. So I
Right.
respecting, yes, the respect is there for my family, my children, but also respecting those who I've taught in the past and how they
Mhm.
impacted me too as well.
Mhm.
So I'll answer the first question in terms of how I got to that topic, right? So, dating back to, like I said, the spring of 2016, where I first heard that segment on public radio about the rise of homeschooling, here in America among Black families. And it just always stuck with me, just the idea that in the research, is very, very forward in terms of talking about how particularly Black boys are treated in public institutions, public schools, or even prep schools or private schools or parochial schools. Um, and sort of the idea of the Black male or the Black boy being mistreated in school, very, very well known, very, very popularized. So that's you know that stuck with me, just hearing the parents talk about how they just didn't like the way their kids are being treated. But as I sort of tucked that idea in my back pocket way back when, as time rolled on, though, I was really interested in the ways in which how, but clearly it's not only Black boys being homeschooled, right? I mean, you have families with multiple children, and or maybe just all girls, or just may have a daughter. And so I'm really interested in just how does I was really interested in the idea of meaning, right? Like what does it mean for Black homeschooling parents, mothers and fathers, to homeschool a Black child, right? And sort of going broader than that, or more in depth, than more in depth, what does it mean to homeschool a Black boy, and what does it mean to homeschool a Black girl? Are there commonalities, or if there are nuances or differences, what are they, and how does that come from? And so in terms of the focus, yes, my research is focusing more so on the vantage point of the mothers and fathers, but I'm also interested, not solely how they see it, but I'm interested in sort of the interactions, right? Like how as a Black homeschooling mother, how do you see the homeschooling experience, for your Black son and daughter, and what are sort of the ways in which you go about relaying those messages, right? The idea of gendered racial socialization, right? A lot of Black parents racially socialize their kids through the vehicle of homeschooling, right? And so what does that look like on the part of mothers? For fathers, for example, while the research shows, and not only the research, but even my own data collection, I'm seeing mothers are definitely predominate that space in terms of being the primary homeschooling parent. However, Black fathers do play a role, and I want to magnify the partnerships, right? How do families come together and make this work? Because even while one given parent, or let's say the father, for example, might not be the primary instructor, he's providing support in other ways, whether it be financially, emotionally, just being there as a support system, and even if it's grandparents or aunts and uncles. So I'm interested in just the partnerships and how Black parents go about creating this enterprise in their households. And again, how do fathers see it? What's their role? How do they see the homeschooling of their Black sons and their Black daughters? And those sort of if you will, how do gender sort of combine between the different actors in this household, and what is that? How does that manifest into actually, the motivations for homeschooling, the curricular choices, the instructional methods? Those are my core three, my pillars, right? In terms of motivation, curriculum, and instruction. How do those play out, and how does gender shape parents' approaches to those things, and how they perceive them, and how they go about actually, conducting that work in their households?
That's amazing. Have you are you still in the midst of your research, or have you already completed your data collection and you're now writing?
Yeah, so I am definitely teetering towards the end of data collection, more so in terms of the mothers that I want to speak to. I'm definitely still trying to garner more fathers for the research. And so but I can't wait for the writing phase, right? I can't wait to dive into that qualitative data to really, really we're still kind of in the midst of COVID when this is starting, right? And so and so I got a chance to talk to a lot of parents by way of Zoom or by phone, and it was really, really interesting just to hear. Excuse me. I love hearing the stories. I love hearing how you came into this way of life and this way of being, because kind of like teaching in a traditional setting. Well, I won't say traditional setting, but kind of like teaching in the sense of in the job sector, right? But even though, I mean, whether it's at home or on the job, many teachers will tell you, especially those who love their work and who are really good at it, they'll say, this is a way of life. This is not a job. This is, yeah, I work in a building or I work in an institution, but this is my life. This is what I do. And so I'm interested in how the parents, how they do it, right? Quote unquote, how do they do homeschooling? How do they live it? And how does it shape all facets of their lives for them and for their children?
Well, I can tell you that we will definitely, I hope that you will return for part 2 to give us the rundown of what you find when you do dive into your data and and you start writing, because I think that this is fascinating. And I think that your voice as a Black man is so valuable, because that even when we think of gendered, I think even the research on homeschooling, particularly on Black homeschooling, is so gendered. Is that, we definitely have my colleague Dr. Fields-Smith, who is the most prolific when it comes to Black homeschooling in general, but even subsequent researchers like myself and other people are typically women, and so it just is wonderful to have a Black man come in. And the things that you're addressing and looking at, I think, are so valuable. As you were talking, I was thinking of my own homeschooling journey with my daughter, and how, yes, definitely, first and foremost, I was and my partner will tell you that he trusted me entirely with leading our homeschooling practice. But I would say for the entirety of homeschooling for high school, that he and my daughter had more of the at-home engagement in terms of what she was focused on, because it was more self-directed.
Mm.
He is a musician, and she is as well. And with his guidance, she taught herself how to play multiple instruments. They produced music together, did music theory, and just a lot of the things that she was able to jump into on her own as a high schooler. That's pretty much when dad stepped in and their relationship, and it much more involved than when she was in elementary school. So I'm really excited about your research. I'm really excited to see what the families say. Do you have a goal for your data set? How many folks are you talking to?
Yeah, so my goal is to have, 30 mothers, 30 fathers.
Oh, okay, that's
Like I said,
substantial.
yeah, so if I can get that done, that'd be amazing. Like I said, if in the event that the numbers don't pan out that way, ultimately what I want to do is, at the end of the day, I want to make sure that I can bring forth the voices of the Black homeschooling mothers and fathers in a very, very comparable way. I want this to be I just, I want it to be a situation where the parents are really, really able to tell their story, and to really, I want to be a vehicle through which the Black homeschooling experience can be magnified, and I want to do it respectfully. I want to honor what the parents are telling me, and what they're even, or what their kids are telling them, and how they can kind of relay that information in
Right.
terms of. And so, um like you said, there's a dearth of research on it, and so I saw it as a very, very ripe opportunity to,
Yes.
in what way, as a, a budding scholar, in what way can I add to this conversation, or, or advance the conversation, and what can I
Right.
do? What role can I play? And so
Well,
I
this
think that,
sounds like, yeah, this sounds like a great start. Are you looking to continue this pathway of research after you graduate, or um, you haven't thought that far yet?
yeah, I think, definitely. I mean, it's a part of me now, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's a part of me now. So like I said, I'm not exactly sure the exact route
Right,
I will
right, right.
take in terms of extending this work, but I do know that I want to, continue in this vein. Like I said, even at, whether as a scholar, whether as a living, breathing homeschooling
Right.
parent, homeschooling parent, in that respect too as well. And so I definitely think that's something that's very valuable. And I see Black homeschooling as, in many ways, don't want to use too lofty language here, but I do see it as a way, as a very, very revolutionary act, and a way of thinking, and ethos. And so
Mhm.
whatever I can do to add to this conversation, I just want to just do my part.
That's wonderful, Matthew. So as we close down, I want to ask you, do you have a contact, or for those listening who may want to be a part of your study, do you have any way that they can get in contact with you for your call for study participants?
Sure. Yes. Thank you for asking me. Yes. So if you are interested in, whether just to learn more about the study from more of a an interest standpoint, or if you actually want to be a part of the study, if you're curious about being a part of this effort, you could email me at matthew.rankin@emory.edu. So that's Matthew with two T's, dot Rankin, Rankin, um, at emory.edu. And you could also call me at 678-826 2921. And so once again, it's 678-826-2921. And like I said, feel free to call, email, or leave a voicemail or a text. And I would love to get back to you as soon as possible. And I just, the homeschooling community here in Metro Atlanta has been incredibly supportive. I can't speak highly enough of the reception that I've had from those who are part of this community. And so, thank you. I want to sing their praises right now. Those who've, I've been able to work with. And so, please do. Like I said, if you're interested, feel free to contact me.
Awesome. And so thank you, Matthew, for being part of Black Family Homeschool Educators and Scholars podcast, Contemporary Perspectives on Black Homeschooling. For those listening, you can learn more about us at blackfamilyhomeschool.org. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.